Great to be back in Gettysburg. As was mentioned, my name is Patrick Falci. I'm a professional actor and a professional historian, and I played General A.P. Hill in the film Gettysburg.
How many people saw the movie Gettysburg? Well, what do you need me for? Good night, everybody. Now then, I'm going to talk about the character I portrayed in the film Gettysburg. Ambrose Powell Hill. A.P. Hill was born November the 9th, 1825, near Culpeper, Virginia. And while he was growing up, his mother would read to him. She would read Shakespeare and military histories. And his favorite people were Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. He wanted to be just like them. You see, Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar wore red going into battle. Either a red cape or a red cloak or a red sash. So someday he wanted to lead a lot of men in a terrific battle and save the day. Who knew that old expression, be careful what you wish for? But let's see what happens. But let's not forget about A.P. Hill's father, who went horseback riding and fishing and hunting, all the things that Virginians love to do. And A.P. Hill, well, you see, he was a fun-loving guy. What he would love to do is have dancing. He would love to play theatrics. He would do all of those kind of things. Like I said, he was a true fun-loving guy. And speaking that he was a fun-loving guy, years later on, he would get together with his brigade commanders, and they would smoke pipes. Yes, he loved to have a good time while he was young. And you see, his family were merchants. They didn't own any slaves. And you see, what he would do was be part of the Church of England. And with that Church of England, he could, like I said, go dancing, and he could do so many things. But when he was A.P. he was about 12 years old, the New Wave Baptist movement swept through that part of Virginia. Do we have any Baptists in the audience? All right. Now, how often do you sneak off to go dancing? Huh? How often do you have a drink? Huh? I won't tell. I won't tell. But you see, because of that new Baptist movement, they put that religion up there where you didn't have to go dancing, where you didn't have to go drinking. But A.P. Hill, no one was going to tell him what to do. And he would always stay away from anybody who wanted to push religion on him a little bit too much. But 16 years old, A.P. Hill gets accepted at the United States Military Academy at West Point. 16 years old. And his mother will give him something as a going-away present, a good luck charm, and in my pocket I carry a replica of it. It is a ham bone. A.P. Hill's mother gave him a ham bone as a good luck charm, and he always carried it with him because it would remind him of home, of family, of Virginia. So here I am in Pennsylvania, A.P. Hill in Pennsylvania. The ham bone is in the pocket. Home, family, Virginia. So now here we are, ladies and gentlemen, 1842. A.P. Hill is at West Point, and he makes friends right away. Among those friends are fellow Virginian Harry Heath, George Pickett. Also, some other friends he'll make, Yankees by the name of Ambrose Burnside, and A.P. Hill's roommate at West Point, George McClellan. Remember that name. Remember that name. He will meet somebody else at West Point, another fellow Virginian by the name of Thomas Jonathan Jackson. Well, A.P. Hill doesn't get along with this fella Jackson. You see, if A.P. Hill had any free time after his studies, he would go off to the local tavern, Benny Havens, and hoist a few. But this fella Jackson, he would read as much as possible. He would try to learn his lessons, and if he had any free time, he would read his Bible. And Jackson always said, it is not desirable to have a large number of friends. Whereas A.P. Hill had many friends, and he loved adventure. But unfortunately, he loved adventure a little bit too much. Whereas one time, when he was in West Point, he decided to take a little adventure to New York City. And when he went to New York City, how can I say this? There are children in the audience, so A.P. Hill in New York City had a date with a soiled dove. Now, you're going to have to explain that to the youngsters, all right? So after that date with the soiled dove, A.P. Hill caught something. And unfortunately, he had to take a leave of absence. So instead of graduating the class of 1846, A.P. Hill graduates in the class of 1847. And it kills him because all his friends from the class of 1846 go off to fight in the Mexican War. Particularly Thomas Jonathan Jackson. And this fella Jackson gets brevetted 3 times. No other American officer is brevetted more than Thomas Jonathan Jackson. Finally, 1847, A.P. Hill goes to Mexico and he is ready for action. Here's a description of A.P. Hill. He wore a flaming red shirt and a wide white sombrero. On him, he had 2 horse pistols, a large artillery saber, 2 revolvers, and a large butcher knife. I tell you, no Mexican was safe with Hill around. Unfortunately, most of the battles are over, but something did happen to A.P. Hill in Mexico. He gets sick. He gets typhoid fever in Mexico. He gets a social disease at West Point in New York City. He gets typhoid fever there in Mexico. Well, time marches on, and here he is again, now then, in Florida. And he fights the Seminole Indians. Again, A.P. Hill is ready for action. But something happens to A.P. Hill in Florida. Oh, you heard this one before, huh? Yeah, he gets sick. This time he gets yellow fever. A social disease in New York, typhoid fever in Mexico. You don't want to get too close to me. Okay. And yellow fever in Florida. A.P. Hill is not a well person at all. Well, finally, in 1850s, A.P. Hill is stationed in the Washington, D.C. area, and something happens to him. No, he doesn't get sick. He falls in love, which could be the same thing, depending on your point of view. But A.P. Hill falls in love. Her name is Ellen Marcy. They love each other very much. She comes from a well-to-do family. Hill comes from a well-to-do family. They are engaged, and they're about to be married. But Ellen Marcy's mother found out that years ago, A.P. Hill had that date with the soiled dove. That didn't go over too well with Mother Marcy, I'll tell you that. So the engagement was broken off, and Ellen Marcy ends up marrying George McClellan. Again, A.P. Hill misses out on his chance for glory. But let's not feel sorry for A.P. Hill. After all, there's always someone for everyone, right? I mean, just look in this audience. Look at the person next to you or across the aisle. But I don't want to get into that right now. That's your business, okay? So her name is Kitty Morgan. You will meet her. She is from Kentucky. Matter of fact, she's the sister of a future Confederate general by the name of John Hunt Morgan. They truly love each other. Matter of fact, they will be married, and if there's any way, during any campaign, can we try to have her near him, always to be by his side. But 1861, war clouds come over Virginia and the country. So A.P. Hill decides to leave the United States Army and cast his lot with Virginia and the Confederate States of America. So that first great big battle of the war takes place July the 21st, 1861, at the Battle of Manassas, or as they say here in Gettysburg, Bull Run. You're awake. Bull Run. You're absolutely right. So at that Battle of Bull Run, A.P. Hill is there, but so is somebody else. Somebody else who become the hero of the Confederacy, Thomas Jonathan Stonewall Jackson. And that person, Jackson, General Jackson, will become the hero of the Confederacy for his magnificent performance at Manassas, and then later on in the Valley Campaign, Stonewall Jackson and the Stonewall Brigade. But where is A.P. Hill? A.P. Hill is a colonel of the 13th Virginia, and he is ordered to guard the lower banks of the Bull Run for a possible federal flank attack, which never comes. Again, A.P. Hill misses out on his chance for glory. Well, time will march on, and here we go into 1862, and Jackson becomes the hero in the Valley Campaign, and A.P. Hill will become a brigadier general in February of 1862, and then in May he would distinguish himself at the Battle of Williamsburg, and he would become major general. And now here we are, ladies and gentlemen, June 1st, 1862, and Robert E. Lee assumes command of the Army of Northern Virginia, and A.P. Hill christens his new command the Light Division. It is the largest division in the Army of Northern Virginia, and he trains it for speed. Speed, get there at the right place at the right time. But now, there's a new threat at the Confederate capital in Richmond, Virginia. So, Robert E. Lee decides to gather his major generals together at the Dobb House. And who is there? Who is there? D.H. Hill, Daniel Harvey Hill. James Longstreet is there. A.P. Hill is there, and so is Stonewall Jackson. Because that new threat, the commander of the Yankees, is George McClellan, A.P. Hill's old roommate. Come on, everybody, all together. 1, 2, 3. George McClellan. So now, the time of the attack of those Yankees will take place on the 25th of June. But now, everything would revolve around Stonewall Jackson. But Lee figured that would give it a little bit too tight. So, 26th, the battles will begin with Jackson leading the way. 12 o'clock on the 26th of June. At 12 noon, A.P. Hill is ready. He is waiting to hear from Stonewall Jackson. No, Stonewall Jackson. 1 o'clock, still no Stonewall Jackson. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, still no Stonewall Jackson. So A.P. Hill took it upon himself to send his light division across the Chickahominy and attack those Yankees, but then they are hit hard because Jackson never shows up. The next day, Lee decides to have General Longstreet's division and General Hill's division fight side by side. So it's the Battle of Gaines' Mill, and what happens? They get hit hard because Jackson never shows up. 3 days later, Battle of Frazier's Farm. Again, Hill and Longstreet fight side by side. But where is Jackson? He's within easy distance of White Oak Swamp. But he never shows up. Again, the Light Division is hit hard. But thankfully, Robert E. Lee pushes those Yankee armies away from Richmond and saves the day, the capital of the Confederate States of America. But you got 3 good reasons why A.P. Hill does not want to work with Stonewall Jackson, because he blamed Jackson on those defeats at Mechanicsville, Gaines' Mill, and Frazier's Farm. Now, ladies and gentlemen, believe me, I'm not here to bash Jackson. I'm not here to do that. How many Stonewall Jackson fans do we have in the audience? Now, if Stephen Lang walked through this middle aisle, how many Stonewall Jackson fans will we have in the audience? Yeah, I thought so. The only person Hill was having problems with, how many Longstreet fans do we have in the audience? All you Longstreet fans.